collapse, learning the story and from the story for the future of Europe, in a moment where Europe is debating in the conference on the future of Europe, the desires, the threat perception, the fears of citizens across the continent, trying to, in this great exercise, try to bring in the voices of Europeans to the table. I was telling, my name is Wojciech Przypylski, I run Visegrad Insight, think tank media platform. We're also doing a lot of foresight, including the foresight on Central European voices in the Conference on the Future of Europe. You'll hear more about it later. But now I wanted to go to Mr. Sandro GOZI, our first speaker, President of the Union of the European Federalists, Secretary General of the European Democratic Party, member of Renew Europe in the European Parliament, and the Constitutional Caucus and the Internal Market and Consumer Protection Caucus as well. He's a visiting professor at the University of Geneva, formerly State Secretary for European Affairs in the Italian government, and advisor later to the French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe. Mr. GOZI, the floor is yours to address the not so easy question, to connect the past with the future. How will you do that?
First of all, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this invitation, and thank you very much for this initiative that we are doing together. I think it is very important. I think it's very timely. And I think it is not a time for diplomatic speeches, but a time for very open speeches. And basically, you were asking to let the past meet the future. We had a very interesting week here this week in the European Parliament, where unfortunately the positive past for Poland has met a very nasty Polish present. And together we must work to prepare a much brighter Polish future in Europe. To me, it is clear that our construction, our union must be strengthened, must be enhanced. Certainly, the democratic dimension of the European Union must be strengthened. But we are first and foremost a union of values, first and foremost a community of fundamental rights. And we are based on a very simple principle, which is mutual respect, and we always make the effort to try to understand the reason of the others before coming up with our reasons. This week we are meeting with citizens, we as representatives of the citizens, to prepare, we hope, the European future, to prepare the reform of the European Union. We are here, I'm still in Strasbourg, for example, because tomorrow and after tomorrow I will participate to the works of the conference, the future of the Union. But the beginning of the week began with the debate in the plenary to which I took part and in which I spoke with the Prime Minister of Poland. Nothing of what I told you was reflected in the speech of the Prime Minister. There was no effort of mutual understanding. There was no respect about what we have done freely together. It has never been mentioned that the Polish people freely joined a union of values. And it has been basically, I haven't seen any single effort being made to try to understand each other and to open a dialogue on a very solid and respectful, mutually respectful basis. Personally, I'm very disappointed because I think that it is impossible to prepare the European future without Poland. I always thought that since the very beginning, since I would say 1946, but I would say since 1942, since when Altiero Spinelli wrote the Federalist Manifesto in the Isle of Ventotene, we have always thought that it was a project for the whole continent. And it is clear that a great people and a great country like Poland must be at the heart of this common endeavor. One of my best Polish friends was Bronisław Geremek, personal friend, different generations, but one of my guides. And I was really amazed to listen to the word of the current Prime Minister from Poland after having the great honor of sharing a friendship with someone like Bronisław Geremek. So here we have a fundamental political cleavage. And it is a cleavage which is not strictly related to Poland. The calendar and the time wanted that this week I had also debate on Italy, on the rise of right-wing extremism in Italy. And I think that there is, after all, the golden thread, certainly from my perspective, about what I heard from the Polish Prime Minister on Tuesday, and what I heard from some member of the European Parliament from the extreme right from Italy on Thursday. So I'm not here to give lesson to anybody, because in different countries we have a new cleavage, which is an absolute approach to sovereignty, and a very commercial approach to the European Union. And I disagree with both. I really don't think that sovereignty is an absolute concept. Certainly, we freely decided in the Union to share sovereignty in some issues. And we decided to freely share competencies in some fields, because we know that united, we are better off, united, we are stronger. United, we can regain that sovereignty that we have lost if we stand divided as a European state. Second issue that, I mean, this construction, since the very beginning, has been built upon mutual trust, has been built around a key principle, a cornerstone, which is the primacy of European law over national law. And it is clear that if we had rejected this principle in a systemic way, like Morawiecki has done this week, we would have been still waiting for the first decision on the single market after 70 years. Because it is clear that in the Union, we negotiate, we have lengthy negotiations, the minister negotiates, the parliamentarian negotiate. It takes us sometimes, for the critics, too long to decide, 12 months, 16 months, 18 months of negotiations. But if after that we have reached an agreement, we have taken a decision, we have adopted a law at European level, each country could invoke a constitutional principle, an internal law, a subsequent national law to put in question this common decision. You see, you understand that this is like a sledgehammer against the construction, the European construction. And this is and here we are at the heart of the problem. I remember when I was a civil servant in the European Commission, I was working, I had the privilege to work 5 years in the cabinet of Romano Prodi. And you know that it was our cabinet, our presidency, which was decisive to speed up the enlargement process. And it was one deliberate choice of the Prodi Commission to speed up the enlargement to Poland. And at the time, I used to go very often to Central and Eastern Europe. I remember I was in Vilnius once, and there was a very crowded debate in the Vilnius University. And there was a young student who, after our speeches, asked the floor, and he started to yell at us, saying, "What the hell is this European Union? I have been under the Soviet Union for 70 years, and now you are telling me that I should join another union, the European Union." And my answer to this young fellow was, I don't recall the date when Lithuania democratically decided to join the Soviet Union. I mean, these are the issues which are fundamentally at stake now. And as a Union of European Federalists, we are very concerned. We are very concerned because I told you, each country is of the utmost importance, but for history, for civilization, for size, Poland is indispensable in our common European adventure. And I am concerned because I didn't hear any will of respecting the other members of the club. I heard that when we talk about the rule of law and fundamental rights, we would interfere into Italian or Polish sovereignty with the discourse of the Italian extreme right, the discourse of the Polish government, current. And I think this is a matter of concern. Because when there is a violation of the independence of the magistrature, when there is a violation of the right of LGBTIQ community, when there is a violation of the freedom of speech, we have, it's not that our political choice, we have the duty to intervene. Because the union is a union of citizens, not only of states. And because Article 2 of the union, which is our identity card in terms of values, oblige us to intervene, to support, to protect the right of all European citizens, be they of Italian nationality or of Polish nationality. It is not an interference. And this is a matter of concern because we are, and it will be my last point, we have launched a process where we have to prepare our next step in terms of political integration. Our next step must be a step of a stronger democracy, of a transnational politics which we want to develop. We want to promote European political parties and movement. We want to modify the way we elect our representatives in the European Parliament. We want to do more together in terms of security, in terms of defense. We want to regain control on migratory flows through new European initiatives. You understand that all this means also to continue to share sovereignty, to save our real sovereignty. Because it's that point that we want to defend the European project, which is a project which is based on shared sovereignty on certain issues. Because if we don't do so, as European, we will be lost. National sovereignty as such, for us Europeans, is a dream if it is conceived in absolute terms. To put national sovereignty against European sovereignty is a fundamental historical mistake, because a sovereign Europe in certain policies is there to preserve our national sovereignty, to give back strength to our national sovereignty, to give a strength to our constitutional values at national level, to make us real actors on the global scene, compared to the empire in terms of strength like China, like United States. It gives us strength towards Russia. And these are the contradictions. And this is why I thank you very much for this initiative. And this is why I want to tell you that we are on the side of the Polish people, and we are very reassured that more than 80% of the Polish people wants to remain in the European Union and feels strongly pro-European. We will always be there on your side to bring back Poland at the center of our union of values. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And indeed, there is no Europe without Poland, but there is no Poland without Europe. Also, Danuta Huebner is our next speaker. She is member of the European People's Party in the European Parliament, and with the Constitutional Affairs Marcus, and previously European Commissioner for the Regional Policy, also former EU Affairs Minister, and one of the key voices also in the recent debate on the direction Poland is taking. Polish government is actually taking and influencing the Polish position within Europe. Professor Danuta Huebner, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for the invitation. And it's good to have European Federalists in Gdańsk, and I very much regret that Sandro and myself, we cannot be in Gdańsk. But even in this hybrid reality, I think we are together for a very important discussion. And I think it is important also that it happens in a moment where democracy is very much a preeminent issue on both European and the world agenda. And you put in the title of this meeting the collapse of the Soviet Union, which has been a big issue for my generation. It was one of the brightest moments, I would say, in the European history. But I can imagine that for young people of Europe, the end of the Soviet Union is today an old hat. And this is a history to be studied in the history books. But there is Russia, and indeed the post-Soviet Russia with which we have to contend today is a geopolitical adversary and competitor without any doubt. But I'd say, unfortunately, as Sandro was saying, the real challenge for us today is maybe paradoxically to defend European democracy against internal adversaries rather than external enemies, though I have to admit it is not to deny that Russia has some influence over creating populist landscape in Europe. And we are also just a few days after the debate in the European Parliament that Sandro described with excellently, I think, the debate concerning the rule of law in Poland. And I think this debate will have its place in the annals of history. This debate was, in my view, in a sense, a game changer. And it has a direct relevance to the topic of our panel, which is Democracy is Europe, Remember to Revive. In this debate in the European Parliament, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, she recalled the name of Lech Wałęsa, but also of the Pope John Paul II, as well as Solidarity, as those who changed the history of Poland. And they also had the crucial contribution to the rebirth of the democratic Poland and revived the democratic spirit across Europe. But the point is not only to remember this as a kind of historical artifact, but as a vital element of the European construction. Europe cannot be, I think, imagined otherwise than as a democratic construct. That's for me fundamental. And Europe that would accept other forms of its political existence and governance would not be a real Europe for citizens and by citizens, as treaties say. Not every bag, as we know, with the name of Louis Vuitton on it is a real Louis Vuitton. So some are just cheap fakes, and its mass production spoils the market and cheats the people. So the same is with Europe. Europe of populists, anti-integrationists, deniers of various sorts would not be a real Europe, but just a retarded vision of it, a cheap political product that would fool people by pretending that it is a real thing. And the debate in the European Parliament was not just about Poland and its problems with rule of law. It was a powerful defense from all but a very few political families of that idea of Europe as democracy, Europe as democratic construct. And I think that those who would like to reduce Europe's presence in our life must have been mightily surprised by the determination of all the European deputies who in practically every speech were defending the core values of Europe with zeal and ardor, if I can say it this way. And Polish politicians attacking European integration saw with his own eyes that the Parliament, the European Parliament, will not give in to authoritarian tendencies and will defend democratic Europe against the onslaught of the false populist politics. And well, I think to a Polish politician who's used to juggling truth and mix real facts with fake facts on the national Polish scene, it must have been a surprise to witness the determination of European Democrats. And I think it was really a powerful and a very needed lesson of humility in the face of pro-democratic consensus in the chamber, with very few dissenting voices from the alt-right flank. In philosophy, there is this term of sensus communis, and some translate it as just common sense, but I think it's much more than that. And Sandro, you might remember that you had in the 17th century a philosopher, Giambattista Vico, who refers to this common sensus communis, if I can say it in the original language. It refers to a constellation of power around certain concepts of knowledge that embed themselves in particular social practices. And in the European Union, seen as a set of certain social practices, because I think this is exactly the case, developed over years, the rule of law is such a concept, a fundamental base for Europe as a community of laws and values. And it is not just an accidental term introduced into the EU speak, but it is an existential foundation for the Union as this democratic construct I mentioned. So whoever steps out of that crosses the red line and is outside the sensus communis. This was very clear during that very long debate, and the bond of the principle of rule of law is, as the Commission's president said, a glue that binds Europe's member states and without which Europe does not make any sense. And as Martin Luther said, here I stand, I can do no other. Indeed, I think European Union today must stand on firm principles and can do no other. And now the question is whether those who by their own volition go outside this sensus communis should be excluded from the consensual community of the European Union. That's for us a big question. Some commentators on the anti-European side saw the debate as such a sign of rejection of Poland. Well, I believe that the Polish government's arrogance of actions, its disrespect toward the Union, its institutions, its hollowing out of the judiciary, crude attempts at defenestrating the public sphere of our freedoms are facts of life. But Europe's soul stays with citizens. Also, it stays with us, citizens of Poland. And as we all know, there has been for a while a search going on for the soul of Europe for, I think, because we want to see Europe also as a motion. And illiberals are those who want to deprive us of this soul, to change our principles, to change our behavior. But most of us Poles want to be, and indeed are credible members of the sensus communis. We want to participate in dialogue on the future of Europe in a credible way, to present the real proposals for making Europe stronger together in the face of the world. And as the saying says, the hope dies last. And it is in this spirit, I think, that the Commission and especially its president has held the hand extended to the rule of law offenders, ready to talk to the last person standing. But I would say in vain. The Polish government has not repaid with the same openness for dialogue. It probably still counts on national brakes deployed by the Council, but this time around, politicians must not ignore what citizens stand for. So I count on the Council as well. Those who believe in and care about democratic Europe have to commit themselves actually to staying together as a responsive, evolving community of citizens. And democracy, I think, can be destroyed at the institutional level if only autocratic parties or forces are very determined. Procedural democracy, on which we usually rely, is an inherently very cold, formal being that can exist in an unchallenged state only in the context of a general political consensus. But if any anti-democratic force breaks this consensus, then the limits of procedural democracy are clear. Procedures can be thrown out of the window. We all know that overnight, and democracy can slowly die. But I'm convinced that democracy will only defend itself when it is a life-giving value of the civil society, of us citizens. And I think that democracy is realized on a daily basis through our moral and concrete commitments. And this democracy, which is based on a strong identification with values, such as the rule of law, but also equality, also civic participation, also horizontal ties between different segments of society, cannot be overthrown as easily as procedural democracy. And it is a type of network democracy in which each node of the network strengthens the other. And we have to remember what I think it was a Swiss philosopher also who said it first, then we all repeat, claiming the ownership that the point is not to foresee the future, but to create it. And indeed, Europe of tomorrow will not just happen, it will have to be created. And I hope that the conference on the future of Europe, taking place as we speak actually, and this week especially importantly, will be such an instrument for bringing a renaissance of civic involvement on a pan-European basis and reviving Europe of our dreams. And the conference should become a place for a sort of enhanced cooperation of European citizens, because it's not only member states that can enhance European integration, citizens can do it as well. And conference can become a natural place where the citizens will be the masters of the Europe's future. And we see some of good signs of that ownership already now. And I think it is more probable that it can happen today than it was in the past, because we know that more than 9 in 10 of Europeans, they agree that citizens' voice should be considered for decisions relating to the future of Europe. And these numbers, I think in themselves, they are extremely important driver for making Europe an ever closer Union. We should build on this sentiment. So let me end with an apt quote, I hope, from the Ventotene Manifesto that we have been looking into it for the last year several times, probably, Sandro. And I found a quotation that says, "The moment has arrived in which we must know how to discard old burdens, how to be ready for the new world that is coming, that will be so different from what we have imagined." I would only modify it so far that this new world is actually already with us. We know what kind of new world we need and we dream of. And however astonished by it, we can sometimes be, or we must be, able not only to adapt to this emerging world, but first of all, lead it. So let's hope you will succeed in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Professor. And for this rich injection of ideas of the foundations on which Europe has been built so far, reminding us that it is built on the ruins of empires, and it is built on the empire of law. In the context of today's debates, and of course this is so pressing with, unfortunately, Poland, and I definitely will engage in the discussion. Lots of questions from the floor here will be on the position of Poland and what will happen here, but reminding us that this is about strong determination and coming together of people of good faith. And I think there is a Polish poem and a song that reflects that there are more people of good faith. They just need to come together to defend the oppression, to defend the past, that Black legacy. That is really the future. Thank you so much again. And now let me introduce Leonie Martin from the young European Federalist, so-called JEF, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. She's the president of the group. She was previously vice president. She studied as an Erasmus student in Budapest in 2012, observing closely how Viktor Orban was undermining the European project from within, from his own national agenda. and she has seen this also, and she has been working tirelessly with democracy under pressure projects and other types of projects she engaged in initiating, energizing, and bringing people together. So Leonie, tell us more about your vision and your input into how you look, how you draw from the past to build for the future.
Thank you very much, Wojciech. I'm very happy that we're having this event specifically in Poland in this week. I mean, with Sandro and with Danuta, we had excellent speakers reporting to us live on what has happened in this indeed historic moment in the European Parliament plenary. As you have mentioned, we have a campaign as Jeff called Democracy Under Pressure. It actually turned 15 years old this year. So it started as something called Free Belarus, and then unfortunately in the 2010s we had to change it to Democracy Under Pressure because we saw that well, democracies were changing within the European Union as well, and we wanted to dedicate space to that. So essentially it is a week where young activists all across Europe in our non-partisan organization get together, organize debates, organize street actions to make sure that this is drawing public attention. I'm pretty sure Sandro and Danuta have already underlined how much this is integral essentially to our everyday lives. But really, I think that sometimes people are really forgetting how much we as European citizens, all of us, are affected by this. This is not just a Polish issue. This is not just a Hungarian issue. This is not just a Central European or Eastern European issue. This is an entirely European issue. If you come from a very fiscal mind, then perhaps this affects you as a taxpayer, where European money has been abused by, for instance, Orban and his friends, Babiš and his friends in Czechia. If you come from a citizen's perspective, then it is affecting fellow European citizens in their rights and what they want to do and what they want to achieve. If you are someone who wants to engage in our European single markets and you want to set up contracts, you want to trade, then this is affecting you because you cannot longer guarantee the full implication of the rule of law. If you are a member of a minority, for instance, it has different rights on you as well. I know certainly of people from the LGBTI group that have reconsidered traveling to certain parts in Poland because they do not feel comfortable there. Yeah, I mean, the court judgment, for instance, from the Constitutional Court of Poland is actually, in fact, fully putting into question the legal order that we have in the European Union. So this is affecting all of us. And if you live outside of the European Union, which is very much possible because in Jeff and UEF we go, we apply the Council of Europe terms to Europe, then it's affecting you because, what is the worth of Europe as a global player when we talk about foreign policy or enlargement policy, and we want other countries to also adhere to specific values, and we don't have them inside our union as well. So it is crucial, and it's also crucial for us as federalists because, sure, we can have a federal Europe without democracy, but what is that technically? So federal Europe and democracy are fully interlinked, and this is why it's so crucial for us to kind of get engaged there. How do we get there now? Because we've fully have described now what the situation is, and we need to somehow move forward. I think that this is going to happen on multiple levels, and on multiple levels we need to push for it. On the European level, there are certain procedures that are stuck because national governments are protecting themselves in a so-called Article 7 procedure. But there's an interesting mechanism that I hope will be unlocked in the next weeks called conditionality. If you use European money, then you also need to stick to the European values. In fact, it already applies since the beginning of this year. It's just that the European Commission has not released guidelines to it. It feels a bit silly saying this, but I know that the European Parliament is very critical towards the Commission here as well, and really wants this to be released, and I hope this is also the case. I think what we should also look at is actually critically assess the instruments that we have in the European Union. So far, it's a mix of instruments that can sanction basically rule of law violations. So it can only happen after things have happened. We might have court judgments, so things have already happened. It's difficult to reverse them, for instance. Here it might be interesting to have a rule of law mechanism. So where you have an annual review, and this has already started, but it's not as detailed enough as I think we should have it. This rule of law mechanism, it could have, easy color coding, for instance. It can have recommendations. This is also something that the European Parliament has been calling on for years, but the European Commission is moving very slowly on that. And I'm very happy. We've mentioned the Conference on the Future of Europe already. We as JEF, we have submitted an idea to the online platform of this Conference on the Future of Europe, this wider process currently taking place until spring next year, where we precisely demand this rule of law mechanism. It is a popular idea, so people have been supporting it. Interestingly, also at the European Youth event, this has also been mentioned. So this is now one of the top 5 ideas that young people in Europe also want to see, that they see as integral parts to kind of keep Europe. So I think these are a couple of things we need to look at from European perspective. At the same time, democracy is happening on all different levels, right? So we as citizens, we as people living in Europe also have specific responsibilities or specific parts to play there. I think particularly we need to look how we can create political shifts, political changes. And it can already happen, with one person getting politically active. What will be very interesting is the upcoming national elections, for instance, if the opposition will be able to kind of work together and make sure they can set up governments. Here and there, it's going to be more difficult. If you take, for instance, Hungary, they have changed the electoral law in a way that you have gerrymandering. So here they really need to stick together. And I mean, I have heard that there are a lot of young people also in the audience. You getting politically active can already contribute to change, right? It is you taking up an opinion, taking up your space, and showing that you are not afraid. And with that, you are able to already be an inspiration to other people in your field, essentially. I mean, I can only promote JEF because it's non-partisan, and it has the vision of working towards united Europe, where nationalism, where national interests do not play a big role, essentially, and we stick very much to the European values of rule of law and human rights. So perhaps JEF might be the platform you're looking for.
Let me stop you there to have a discussion still, right? Because we will need this half an hour remaining also for a discussion. And yet, I mean, you underlined all the important points of how activity and action of your platform and similar platforms are important, and how, in practical terms, there are game-changing moments in the very near future, as you pointed out, the elections, that are the right moments to get engaged, to build against the democratic backsliding, not only in one country, but across really the dangers that are visible across Europe. So thank you very much, and we'll come back to your points in the discussion. But now let me warmly welcome Monika Habior, Vice President of the Vice Mayor. But in Poland, you have mayors and you have presidents, and the bigger towns are presidents. So Vice President of Gdańsk for Education and Social Policy Services. Monika has a strong NGO activism background, with working for social cohesion in the region, in the wider region of Pomerania, but also being engaged previously with Amnesty International, and also with London-based Connecting Stories NGO activism that was also building up the social cohesion across the bridges. Monika, you have a difficult role here, as you need to explain why Gdańsk is so European and perhaps the most European city, and why, through the prism of Gdańsk, you should look at Poland as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think Gdansk, well, first of all, welcome to Gdansk. It's an honor to have you here and to have this discussion here. Especially, I think it is incredibly important to have this discussion between generations and listen to questions and answers across generations. So thank you so much for choosing Gdansk at this moment. I think Gdansk is an interesting city because in our history you actually see the processes that Europe went through, beginning from Hanseatic, multicultural, very trade-based city, very independently being constantly in history, very independent in terms of relating to the state of Poland, the state of Russia, and now building its relation with also as a Polish city with Europe. We also, of course, in our history, as we saw today, went through some difficult times and saw how horrible the world can be, the divisions, war, and inability to look at other peoples with goodwill, and focusing on peace, how destructive it can be. But Gdansk is also a city of innovative social and political ideas. And I know that you have visited European Solidarity Center today. And certainly solidarity was an incredible movement of ordinary people who just erupted and just wanted to say stop to non-democratic rule of communist government in Poland. We, of course, are very strongly, Gdansk is a city of political debate and social debates. Many of our prime ministers, our presidents are from Gdansk, so of course the background, the focus is very much on politics and social development. But the dimensions of social and political debate must include culture, climate, human rights, equality, also economical development, social, economical solidarity. All those aspects are very important. And Gdansk today is a city which really, on one hand, sticks to the values which were mentioned here, equality, human rights, but also looks for new ways of implementing, new methods of implementing local democracy. We mentioned here before a citizens panel, that's not the only method that we work with. So Gdansk certainly is an interesting city. I hope for you, and I hope we are able to show at least a little bit, and maybe encourage you to come back and ask questions about how we do things here. But of course, the debate that we entered, we started from a very worrisome aspect, and also we talked about it a little bit before. Poland as a country which is in danger of cutting our ties with the European Union. I think what is incredibly important, not only that the fact that that our connection with European Democrats, we are European Democrats. The majority of Polish people feel that they are European Democrats. This is one fact that we have to now remember about. The other one is that people of Poland not only debate, but they really walk out to demonstrate for Europe, but also European values. So last Sunday, we came out on the streets in over 120 cities, 1,000 cities, with a huge demonstration in Warsaw, 100,000 people, to demonstrate our will to stay in European Union, but also, and this is our will to stay in this community, which danuta huebner told us about. But also, we constantly come out to the streets about women's rights. There is a big demonstration in Warsaw and maybe in other cities also for women tomorrow, for equality in general. So of course LGBTQ rights as well. So certainly, and another fact that I wanted to mention is the research facts, the fact that Polish people are in huge majority against leaving the European Union by Poland. So I think the Polish government has brought itself into huge trouble right now. But as we know, I think for people who, from my perspective, being here inside, being with people, listening to what they say, but in the same time observing the international debate, I think it is important and hugely important for you to understand that people in Poland in great majority are not aware of how Europe is worried, how much Europe and the world is worried. I think it is not coming through. One aspect of this is that the government, which is clinging into authoritarian state, completely has overtaken the public media. So there is an absolute blockage of information that is critical to the governmental politics. It means that apart from people who do not follow public media, those who are not, for example, who are unable to pay for private media, those who are not in big cities, those who are excluded from internet, because also that is not absolutely for everyone right now, unfortunately. This, can I just finish the sentence? This means that for a huge majority of people, this information is manipulated. Also, not everyone is following international media. So, can I just say something from my life? I do like, I check press from around the world. Very often I do it just to relax from Polish reality. But in the last 2 weeks, wherever I looked, there was Poland on the front page. Whether it was UK, whether it was Germany, whether it was America, whether it was Israel, whether it was France, Poland, in a negative way, in this negative context of Pole exit, was on front pages. And I don't think, or even I'm sure people here do not realize. So even if Polish government is telling us, no, we are not going to take you out, it can still happen because other nations see it that way. So it's incredibly dangerous, this moment.
Thank you, Monica. I was just pointing to my next effort will be to have a hybrid debate, and I don't think I ever moderated a hybrid debate, but then we have it, because you raised so many important points. But on one side, connecting Gdansk, and the emblems of Gdansk are of course the visual side, but the slogans of Gdansk is the city of freedom, right? This is the city that gave birth to solidarity, and it is also the city of freedom, meaning that you construct and you uphold the idea of a community of free people, and the city itself being free in its policies today. It actually often acts against the government or against the propaganda of the government when it took in the migrants and refugees with the crisis in 2014-15.
We were not able to.
You were prevented from the government, but still you were signing the letter together with other cities to actually host them. And the city of Gdańsk is also welcoming to large communities from across the border of the EU, regardless of that particular situation several years back. So this is a very, you know, this is not just about history and symbols, but this is a very much about the present day policy making and doing things that you can, because in every position you are, also in Gdańsk, which is not steering, which is not, despite having Lech Wałęsa and previously Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, exactly. Gdańsk is not, you know, pulling the strings of the whole country. Sometimes people wonder why not. It would be great. And you're doing that, and it's very important, and it's also reminding us that on every level you can do that. I want to ask who do we have still online with us? Leonie, definitely we can see you on the screen. I'm not sure.
Danuta is also here still.
Fantastic.
If you need me, I can go.
Yes. Yes, we hear you when we need you, and I think you related really in one of your editorials recently for Polish Press of Borcza to, you know, a dangerous moment Poland is in. What do you see hopeful? Let's say, what do you see in a sense? You know, you wrote a wake-up call really in this op-ed for Poland, because we are on a dangerous curve, right? This were more or less your words, yeah. Your translation.
Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I've been involved in preparing Poland for the accession and just involved in many also Polish negotiations when we were negotiating the accession, and then I was in Europe in Brussels for so many years, and I'm just wondering what went wrong and why. Because I remember I remember the referendum, the preparation for the referendum. I remember having hundreds of meetings across Poland with old and young people, with practically everybody who wanted to talk. And you remember probably the results of the referendum, more than 70, I think 5% people voting in favor, now close to 90 happy. So what happened in the meantime that we have elected this type of leadership that is actually sparing no effort to reduce the role of Poland in Europe and to reduce the role of Europe in Poland? I'm just hesitating to say taking us out, even though if one would treat seriously the last judgment of the Polish Constitutional Tribunal, then they took us out from the legal, from the union of the law, which European Union is. So I just don't know whether we didn't have imagination, we didn't have, I think, enough information 30 years ago, and then 17 years ago when we were joining the European Union, that we didn't envisage this thing. And then we were not like this bird in the mine that is just making sound early enough so that everybody goes out before the catastrophe happens. I just don't know what happened to us, that we just slept it over somehow. And so I'm just that's why I'm just thinking why it's happening, what is happening. It's so difficult to believe. And if you take into account how much Europe has contributed to our well-being and how we are today, it's just largely also thanks to the membership in the European Union and people's support. And still we are having this circus, this kind of political action that is just working against everything that people want and everything that is good. So I just don't know the answer to this question. It's probably like you explained Trump or any other cases, or Mr. Orban in Hungary. There are some explanations to all those things. And then it's so easy in Europe to attach to the populism also the European Union, because it's so easy to criticize European Union 5 days a week. So yeah, but that's what worries me, that we just skipped it over somehow. We didn't notice that the light on the street has changed from green to red, and this is what is worrying me so much. And this is why I'm frustrated sometimes, that we didn't see it coming and we didn't do enough.
So why don't we have a talk about it here with our fantastic participants in Gdańsk, who definitely have either questions or comments on the situation. and would definitely come to the floor. So please come to the mic so that we actually have this exchange for everyone. Introduce yourself and give your comment or ask a question.
Okay. Hi, my name is Nika. I'm from Berlin, Germany. And my question, maybe it's a bit naive, but because it has been repeatedly said that the majority of Poland does not support this way or is against leaving the EU. My question first would be, who voted the government? Then secondly, will it drastically change with the next elections? Or is it what you mentioned that people, or with the media, that people stay uninformed and do not realize how much impact it could have? So many questions.
I think,
yeah, Monica.
I think because we did start this conversation. I think, in my opinion, the way we observe the current government working, they never said they want to leave the European Union. They absolutely now ferociously defend themselves in all media, saying that whatever they do is not about leaving the European Union. But in the same time, as you can hear us here, they are doing it. Whether they want it or they're just inept for ruling, which I think, yes, they are. It's another question, but certainly they never said it with like in front. They never did it. So basically, those people who elected they did not elect them because of leaving the European Union, but for other reasons. And I think there are reasons why they wanted. This is really important, I think, because what was promised was to look into the individual person, into the needs of an individual or the family. The concept, the political concept, the socio-political concept previously, and I think it wasn't a bad concept, but we have to learn from what happened, was to create high quality public services, and create in that sense the frame for good living, but not looking into individual situation of individual people, for example, very low minimum wage and things like this. I think this was why this government was voted for, and on the top of this, the identity issues, which are probably to be really discussed and are being discussed in many countries, like what is the national identity within European identity? How do they relate to each other? As I said, in Poland, the resentment or even the trauma of Second World War is incredibly important today. And because of that, it's very easy to reverse or put against each other European common versus Polish. It goes from patriotic to nationalistic, unfortunately, and egotistic. So those divisions are being exploited. And on the top of that, we have everything that we notice on, for example, social media, also exploiting the divisions. We saw it in the United States last week. A woman from Facebook was telling us how exactly those algorithms are working, and how Russian politics is really working on dividing and creating chaos. I'm pretty sure, I'm totally sure, Poland is a great place to explore those policies of Russia. Why not? If they did in the United States, in the United Kingdom.
Yeah. If I may just very briefly refer also to what Sandro GOZI was saying, that Poland is an indispensable element of the European Union project. Well, some people believed in it so much that they thought no matter what we do, it's going to be the same way always. So this is part of the hubris, the hubris that we lived through. You know, we got as Poland, exactly, Prime Minister Tusk elected president of the European Union. all of a sudden people believed we're at the top. You know, nothing can happen to us. This was a vote, and the previous votes were on the ticket of increasing prosperity that went up a lot, and people demand more prosperity. They have absolute right to demand more prosperity. But at the same time, this was on the ticket that we are too big to fail and nobody will say anything to us. So what Danuta Huebner was mentioning in her speech, this fierce determination that now Poland is met with, Polish government especially, from the EP, from the Commission, this is unexpected element, and I hope it is a wake-up call, but we'll see.
But can I just add one thing, because I believe that we just talk about this 80 or 90%, but of course it's unevenly distributed across Poland. And if you look only at the constituencies of the current ruling parties, then of course the support is much lower, but still it's supported by the faith in what the PiS is saying, because PiS is saying we don't want to leave European Union. So people believe him. Their people believe, their believers. They of course think that this is exactly what is the reality, that nobody wants to leave. So we can safely support our membership in the European Union, because this is in line with what the ruling party is saying. And of course, if you look at the non-PiS constituencies, then truly the support is just extremely high and is deciding on this high average for Poland. So it's a very complex, probably, issue, but that doesn't change the fact that what Madam Javier was saying, that there is lack of information also because of media blockages and because of lack of access to other televisions at the national or nationalized television in a substantial part of Poland. So there are many factors. Plus, the young people are sort of have been, I think, asleep for many years, and now they are waking up, and this is something which comes very late, but I hope it will also create the potential for change in the years to come.
Yeah, we have another comment or question. Please come forward. Yes, you have to come to the circle. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Anastasia. Right now I'm doing a degree in Leonie University in Krakow. And originally I'm coming from Russia, and I was wondering, it was mentioned that the current government controls the public media. I was interested in what ways. Is it through restricted laws, or is it through, I don't know, funding, or controlling the media by a board of directors?
Yes.
Because in Russia there is a very dangerous precedent, because there recently has been adopted a foreign agent law, and right now a lot of
we don't have it. Hungary has it. Hungary is copying the Russia model quite quickly. We're catching up. Hopefully, we will not get there to catch up really. But the thing with public media, if I might just quickly explain, this is usurpation of taxpayer money that are supposed to go on tax, to the public media and represent the voices in the debate. And instead, they created a Fox News type of channel through the public TV and through also the public radio, where this is all about Ministry of Propaganda. Actually, the head of the TVP is known for liking to be called Mr. Minister, not the director of public. And then from Gdansk, so. Well, what can you do? Gdansk always there needs to be a degree of flavor, let's say. So yeah, so that's in brief the situation. We're not yet there. We are on the path. And hopefully we're stopping this path because Poland is different than Hungary, and definitely
there will be there is this saying in Hungary, Warsaw Budapest train, right? Warsaw Budapest Express.
Yes.
So we change it here, and
yeah, I think we need to reverse the tracks really on this, because yes, the Budapest Warsaw Express in the 1989 was coming from Poland to Budapest, bringing all the transformation. Now with Viktor Orban and with quite a weak leader, who Kaczynski is intellectually, he's not so cunning and smart. He just kept copy-paste Viktor Orban, and the Budapest Express is coming from Budapest to Warsaw. So we need to just switch the tracks. It will go at some point.
Join the forces, Leonie, in it.
Yes, and we need exactly allies like on the European level who understand that and who have a global perspective, like Leonie has, to understand that the processes that are taking place here are really global. They are not isolated cases, but these are global challenges to democracy that in particular set up here in Central Eastern Europe play out. And I think what you mentioned about starting with Belarus and then quickly realizing it's about kind of more global perspective. This is the essence, this is the key, and also thanks also for doing this.
Yes, but also political standards are very different, because if you remember what happened 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago in Austria, where the prime minister was sort of allegedly just used public money to pay the private media to improve the image of the government, and when things just became publicly known, he had to resign as prime minister. In Poland, we have it permanently. The public money, instead of going to the oncology or to other socially dramatic situations, the public money goes to the public or national media, as we are saying, and it's not only there's no consequences of it, but there's sort of pride of how we are supporting our media. Yes, so this is the ethics also of politics.
We can discuss more later. There is room maybe for just last one comment or question. Yes, someone has to switch. Come here, please, to the floor.
Okay, thank you. So I don't want to play like a devil's advocate, but just want to say from the point of view.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Anna, I'm also from the Jagiellonian University as an Erasmus student. And my question is about, of course, Polish relations with the EU. So not to play devil's advocate, but from the party's point of view, in case it is interested in gaining more votes and to be re-elected. So probably there is no desire to leave the EU, as the population supports the membership of the country in the EU. But if it is, in case it's a question of trade-offs, and we can, the party expects some concessions, what are the concessions and what do they expect from the EU? Because it was said that there is that current Polish government is a difficult partner for a dialogue. It was really difficult to establish some kind of dialogue. So my question is there a possibility for a dialogue
with some trade-offs?
Poland, with Visegrad countries.
Yeah. Leonie, do you want to take this one? Are there trade-offs? Are there things to negotiate and to have an intelligent, exchange in which you can put yourself in the shoes of the illiberal regimes? What do they want that maybe from your point of view wouldn't be? I know it's a devil. That was Anna. Anna said she's a devil's advocate here, but this is, if we wanted to make sense of what they're saying, what is it that they want? What's the trade-off?
I think this is, thank you, Anna, for bringing up this question, because I think the more you'll learn basically this or engage this weekend, you'll find that at some point there's always this big discussion on rule of law or democracy. Until when do we debate, and where do we say this is the line, you are crossing it, and this is where we have sanctions or where we have cutoffs, essentially. I think it's good to be aware that there has already been dialogue. So the Commission has, I think, started a dialogue with the Polish government already in 2016 when the media laws started. So this dialogue has taken place, and clearly it has not resulted in, fruitful developments towards more democracy. I think if you also look back to, I've been thinking about this a lot, right? Because since 2016, everything's been going downhill a bit everywhere, at least in the Western world. And if you look at our own history, it is impossible to always have dialogue full of respect with people that want to abolish democracy. Because if you have dialogue, it means that the other person is also willing to listen and also willing to accept your opinion. And clearly people are being hurt. In the case of Poland, for instance, we're looking at LGBTI. We're also looking at women's rights. And this is more than half of the population by now. So at some point you need to say, okay, this is it. You're infringing the values. If you keep on talking, essentially, then you're losing out yourself. And again, there's a good book by American author, so it's a very American book, called How Democracies Die. And it's also sketching out examples from, I think, the Belgian Christian Democratic Party in the 1930s, who have been able to kind of act as agents as gates, essentially. You know, in the political parties, people need to be active, need to make sure that these parties are running politically. Newspaper editors, they have their role to play into society, to make sure that they stick with the rules, that they keep distance with politics. Politicians, they have it. In ministries, people need to keep minutes, for instance. That's the current rule of law problem in the Netherlands. So there's multiple ways how we all need to contribute to it. And I really think, I think the moment of dialogue is gone, at least for where we are currently with the Polish government and the Hungarian government.
Yeah, can I just agree with Leonie that the moment for dialogue is gone, that Mrs. von der Leyen, she kept her hand extended to Poland for several years, and what we were doing as Polish government, what Polish government was doing actually was to fight for the right to not respect the European law, and also undermining not only the European law but also the European Convention of Human Rights. And then when they vetoed the big budget, the big funding for entire European Union, they wanted to trade this veto for values. So they said, we will say yes, so there will be money, but we want to buy with this money exactly the right not to respect the European law, so not to respect the values or the principles. So I think that this is something that is unacceptable, because you cannot just trade values for money, and you cannot just have the right in the European Union to have your own merely personal political interpretation of values and principles. I think when you sign the treaties, or when your parliament ratifies the treaties, you are committed to respect all the values and the principles and the European law. So this is the problem, and that's why there's no trade-offs between those things that Polish government wants. And I think the time for dialogue is gone now. Now the issue is to find a solution, which means Mrs. von der Leyen was very clear that you have to even to bring back to the work all those judges that have been fired. These are probably thousands or more of judges, and you have to also close the discipline chamber of the judicial system, the judicial system. So these are the conditions, and of course the judgment about the supremacy of the Polish law over the European law is another thing which is here. So it's very difficult to find, I think, an agreement and trade-offs and dialogue.
Yeah, although effort has been made. Monica, your concluding answer to that.
I think my opinion is slightly different. I think. First of all, I'm a strong believer of diplomacy, which I already mentioned before, and I think the conversation needs to be kept on as many levels as possible, because also the same thing is done by the ruling party. There's constantly looking for people who can support that, and also Democrats have to do it on that side. We have to be constantly looking for people from the ruling majority who are interested in actually subscribing to democratic values. This is what we have to do all the time. In the same time, I think what we saw, I will just give an example, what we saw in the last year, and this is the money argument. Every time when you subscribe to European funding for any project, you have to sign that you will follow European values about equality, for example. And some Polish towns and counties,
communes.
yeah, they at some point in political debate they voted for something that we called anti-LGBTQI rights, like acts.
Yeah.
And when those people realized, majority of them, when they realized that it means that what they signed was just not valued, that many of them changed. They realized what they did, and they started voting against it again, so stopping it. So the pressure is important. Money is an argument, but the dialogue, the diplomacy must be totally kept.
And I'll just spice it up because they didn't realize it on their own.
But be tough.
They didn't realize it on their own. They had a government emissary, so the government, Polish government, was pressing them to withdraw from that. So you just see how dubious, how double-faced, how how tricky and cunning the approach is. And do you really negotiate and have a dialogue with someone who's lying in your face while trying to get to your pockets?
In the same time, those projects are not political projects. In majority, they're educational projects, social projects, infrastructural projects. Very often they are about values. So I think it is important to be tough. Absolutely, I agree. But still and always trying to find build bridges on both sides. If
I may just have my own remark to this question, there is another perspective. If you think trade-offs, there is a point that the government has been rising, the Nord Stream 2, the defiance in the name of national interest and actually particular business interests of Germany to push for the Nord Stream 2 project in defiance not only of Polish insecurities, but a whole European energy packages. And that is something which I wouldn't call a trade-off, but this is seemingly not so stark, conflict within the EU between the national agenda that is acting outside of the European solidarity, but this is opening slowly doors for much more serious attempts, like we have now in Poland, to defy the common European solidarity and regulation. And this is important maybe to remember in this case, as the Polish government is indeed using that. And it's hard to say no, that's there isn't some problem with this approach. I think we're at the time to finish the debate. Thank you very much for your questions, comment, and participation here in Gdańsk and also across Brussels, Strasbourg, across Europe, indeed, across Europe. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Gdańsk, for hosting it. Yep. All right. Yeah.